always fascinated me that regardless of whatever internal dissatisfaction Prince Harry may have been dealing with, his public strategy is deeply flawed. It involved standing by while his spouse heavily criticized his family on global television, and in the eyes of many, openly mocked his culture during their docuseries on Netflix, their fakecumentary. His memoir, Spare, provides a fascinating insight into this dynamic because it's his own truth, his memories as inaccurate as the public may find them to be. When analyzing the Sussexes' PR choices, observers often point out that a person who repeatedly chooses highly public, damaging media avenues over private, mutually respectful conflict resolution is almost certainly going to be viewed as the toxic driver by the public. Think about somebody you know who airs their grievances on social media versus people who deal with it in a healthy manner, in person, in private. Let's be honest. Prince Harry could have made less aggressive, less confrontational choices time and time again. He could have established firm public boundaries to protect his family's privacy, but the optics suggest he actively chooses not to. This, in my opinion, is one of the most illuminating elements of Prince Harry's overall narrative. Welcome back to part 2. If you missed part 1, I will link it for you at the top of the screen. Remember that this series is not a statement of fact, but an exploration of public theories and PR choices, and how Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have found themselves in the uncomfortable position that their image, to much of the public, looks like one giant red flag. And because this couple specifically has chosen to expose so much of their private thoughts and emotions to the world through various shows and interviews and memoirs, they've left a massive paper trail. This series is analyzing that to understand the 3 most common public opinions of this couple and how they view their relationship. Part 1, yesterday's video, examined the theory that Meghan is the driving force, exploring the arguments and seeking out evidence that she exhibits high narcissistic traits, and that Harry is the victim in the relationship. Today, we are going to flip that and investigate the counter theory that Prince Harry's own deep-seated rage and resentment are actually in the driver's seat, and Meghan is simply along for the ride. Finally, at the end of today's video, we will evaluate the third possibility, that they are perfectly matched enablers. Before we dive in, I would like to invite you to subscribe, click like, and hype this video if you wish. So, although Harry markedly changed somewhere along the way, my personal opinion of Harry for years, before Meghan Markle came along, was that he always seemed sort of petulant and easily soured. He is several years older than me, but I remember watching clips of him and William or seeing a bit of news here and there, and he just always seemed much less amiable and borderline malcontent to me even before Meghan came along. But that was just my personal opinion and impression. I had no prior knowledge of Meghan Markle's existence before Harry. Objectively speaking, though, he did appear to enjoy certain elements of his royal life, and one could argue that he looked to have a very good relationship with Princess Catherine and even Prince William as the years went on. Perhaps Princess Catherine was a bridge to help him take his evident rivalry with Prince William less seriously. But now, after all he's done and said, and Spare specifically, is a fascinating look at a man who is deeply displeased with his perception of things. He complained about getting one less sausage than his older brother, and the smaller bedroom in the castle than his brother, or that his father cut off his allowance in his late 30s. This signals a gross sense of entitlement and a lack of ability to reasonably contextualize, a victim mindset in a nutshell. And somebody with that level of entitlement and pettiness certainly doesn't, to me, seem like a well-adjusted, healthy individual who would be easy and healthy in a relationship. When critics argue that Prince Harry is the primary source of the toxicity in he and Meghan Markle's relationship, they often point to his lifelong history and his behavior that's independent of his wife. For example, the pre-existing grievances. Prince Harry himself has alluded that he harbored deep, unresolved rage toward his family. his spare status, and the British media long before he ever met Meghan. From this perspective, he didn't leave because of her. He used her arrival as the catalyst to detonate a system he already deeply resented. Critics also frequently point to Spare, his memoir, his highly fictitious memoir, as the ultimate proof of his own toxicity. The sheer volume of highly personal, decades-old grievances leveled at his brother and father are viewed not as the actions of a controlled husband, but as a man obsessed with settling his own lifelong scores, regardless of the collateral damage to his family or his wife's public image, or the pettiness that it shows he has. He used his memoir as a weapon to hurt people he felt he had a score to even with. His constant public comparisons between his wife and his late mother, Princess Diana, also feels like it's weaponizing paranoia. From a psychological and PR standpoint, critics argue this framing keeps his wife in a perpetual state of hypervigilance and fear, convincing her that the media is an active lethal threat so he can play the savior and isolate her from outside perspectives. There's also the counter-argument that perhaps Meghan plays into this, that he is paranoid and she weaponizes that against him to gain control and attention. But we covered that yesterday. The other side of it is that Harry uses it against Meghan to make her irrationally concerned about the press or her safety or security for the family. Many people point to the moment in the Netflix fakecumentary where they were leaving a parking garage and she and Harry were like pretending there was one paparazzi on a scooter following them as evidence that there was, aggression in the media. And a lot of people viewed that as Meghan fueling Harry's fears. But it is also possible that it goes the other way. Recent media reports, such as the fallout with Harry's Sentibali charity that he co-founded, or problems with the Invictus Games Foundation, have pointed directly to his personal demands, like bringing Netflix camera crews to charity events, or his polarizing public image since Oprah and Megxit, as the source of professional friction or doing damage to the fundraising capacity and ability of the charities. Critics argue his deep entitlement and combative nature are the actual root of their staffing and PR disasters. Although there is evidence to suggest Harry's shortcomings, it's clear that his behavior ramped up as he got more and more discontent and displeased over time. I have always wondered if a big element of this was that he thought Meghan would be just like Catherine, that she would be received the same way, loved the same by the public and the press, and do just as good of a job and fit right in. And when it didn't work out that way, he took it as yet another injustice, another moment where things aren't fair for him because he's not in William's position. And that he's been trying to force people to like her the same as Catherine and believe that she's the victim so as to excuse her mistakes and convince the press and the people that they deserve the exact same positive reception, press, status, security, and regard as Prince William and Princess Catherine. And that his increase in frustrations and aggressive actions over the years is a direct product of his dissatisfaction with this, difference in how Meghan has been viewed and received, or how things have gone with Meghan as compared to what he thought he was getting into when he and Meghan got engaged and got married. And that because the results didn't match what he wanted and his vision, that entitlement kicked in once again, and we started seeing tantrums. But we can also see evidence to support this theory when we look at Meghan's behavior through this lens, that if Harry's the toxic driver fueled by lifelong rage, then Meghan's behavior must be re-examined as the reaction of someone navigating a partner's deeply ingrained trauma and, sometimes challenging behaviors. And critics use this to explain some of her public missteps, like her shortcomings during her time as a working royal, that she was sort of set up to fail by Harry. Critics point out that Meghan claimed to be entirely reliant on Harry to navigate the intensely complex machinery of the royal family and their role. Under this theory, Harry deliberately failed to prepare her, allowing her to take the blame for protocol breaches while he played the victim alongside her, rather than stepping up and demanding she get assistance or get more advice or take a step back or take things slower. Instead of controlling the situation, he basically undermined it or sabotaged it, and then just sat there and decided to play victim with her instead of doing something to try to fix it. We also have the bunker mentality. Her tendency to cut ties with her own family and friends is reinterpreted here as a trauma response to Harry's paranoia. If your partner is constantly telling you that the establishment is out to destroy you, isolating yourselves into a highly defensive us-against-the-world bubble is a natural, though toxic, survival mechanism. Observers also argue that Harry is perfectly content to let Meghan take the brunt of global criticism, allowing the media to paint her as the manipulative American while he maintains a lower profile with slightly less criticisms. They point out that he rarely steps in to correct narratives that blame her for his own family estrangement, using her as a human shield for his own rebellion. Along with entitlement often comes a lack of responsibility and accountability. And many of his actions and interviews and statements can be placed firmly in this category of hypocritical, out of touch, irrational, or toxic. Just looking at what's been happening with the charities he's been attached to in recent years is a sign that supports this theory. And if we take Meghan's word for it, she was entirely reliant on Harry to coach her on royal life. And when she expressed mental distress, like if we take her word from the Oprah interview, he took no action to help her. He chose to allow it to fester to the point of crisis. He either didn't notice that his pregnant wife was showing signs of depression and distress and just was completely oblivious to it, didn't care, didn't pay attention, or he noticed it and did nothing, leaving her to email HR irrationally, erroneously, and just, well, they said no, so I guess we'll just let her suffer? This leads the public to ask, what kind of partner is he that he did not pack his pregnant wife up in the car and go to a doctor's office or out to the country for privacy and a break, or put his foot down and tell her we will not be rushing in to public duties, because he claims that he doesn't trust the establishment and he doesn't trust the media. So then why did he allow her to jump into public duties without a slower pace or more preparation, if he claims that he knew this? It maketh no sense. Many conclude the egocentric partner is who makes those types of choices and mistakes. One who either cannot see or cannot grasp his partner's suffering is too consumed by his own navel-gazing, using Meg as a meat shield for his own inadequacies and inability to prepare, protect, or properly plan for inevitable challenges would be indicative of a toxic vibe and support this theory. But let's move on now to the third theory here, which in my personal opinion is almost certainly the most likely, and that is that toxic vibes travel in packs, birds of a feather and all that. Remember, this is all conjecture. But both these individuals came together with their own agenda and power. Meg was not a naive young woman who needed Harry and his resources, and according to many critics, she specifically sought out Prince Harry. She specifically positioned herself to be appealing to Harry, perhaps giving him a false sense that she was down with this royal life gig and she was going to do a really great job with it. And he was a prince with everything sorted out for him, and many people believe that he wanted a wife that was similar to what Prince William had in Catherine. And he saw that marrying an adequate wife was a ticket to elevate his role and himself within the monarchy, in the press, and within public view, and to compete with Prince William. And he may have lured her in with a lack of disclosure about certain things. Neither were totally reliant on the other, but rather stood to gain in certain motivations with one another. For Meg, that was immense fame and privilege and status unlike that which she previously had or would have ever achieved on her own. And for him, it was that elevation and sense of one-sided competition. If I have a wife like William's, then I should have everything William has, and it will finally feel fair. And both were met with tragically inadequate results for their efforts. They did not get exactly what they wanted out of it. So let's look a little more specifically at this third theory and what evidence we have to support it. One of the biggest ones for me is the us versus the world mentality. That at different points, for different reasons and different motivations, they have developed this closed loop relationship where they are endlessly validating one another, encouraging each other's negative traits, toxic traits, and justifying them for each other, and maintaining it through this it's us against the world mentality, which really makes sense when you look at the facts of all the fractured friendships and isolation and lack of ability to really build consistent success and sustained success, whether that be in staffing, relationships, ventures, anything. All of it has run into problems, and so it seems like that aligns with those types of toxic relationships where it's always everyone else is the problem and it's us against the world, and therefore we have to stick together because all of these people and all of these things are always causing us problems unfairly. When observers argue that Harry and Meghan are equally responsible for the toxicity, they point to the theory of this closed loop relationship. This perspective suggests they validate each other's worst impulses, leading to a shared reality divorced from public sentiment. And critics point to the following patterns. The mutual isolation strategy. Both individuals have almost entirely severed ties with their families of origin and long-term pre-marriage friends. From a PR and optics perspective, this creates a dangerous echo chamber. Without any dissenting voices, grounded advisors, or reality checks from people outside their bubble, they only have each other to validate their decisions. Their joint public enterprise is entirely built on a shared narrative of victimhood and grievance-based brand identity. Rather than one forcing the other into this stance, observers suggest they both actively feed off the validation of being wronged by the establishment or the press or people in their charitable organizations. They require a constant antagonist, whether it's the media, the palace, or their families, to sustain their joint brand, secure media deals, and to sustain this common thread in their relationship. I've witnessed this with people who form a new relationship and it's sort of centered on villainizing the ex from one or the other. And those relationships tend to struggle to last in my observations because it's built on villainizing someone who is no longer part of their lives, and that will only last so long. And if that is your primary bond, then you don't have a good foundation, in theory. There's also shared historical revisionism, which they validate within one another. Critics frequently highlight the couple's shifting public narratives. For example, the pivot from the Oprah interview implications of racist behaviors to Harry later stating they never accused the royal family of such things, but rather it was all unconscious bias. Analysts view this as evidence of two people who hype each other up behind closed doors, pushing out defensive PR statements without checking the tape, resulting in massive joint PR disasters. This theory posits that Meghan validates Harry's deep-seated paranoia about the media, while Harry validates Meghan's grandiosity and desire for A-list status without the confines of royal duty. The paranoia-grandiosity paradox, when these two traits combine, can result in the extreme public behavior that we see, demanding unprecedented privacy while simultaneously starring in a global reality-style fakehumentary or constantly posting things to social media. In a healthy dynamic, one partner usually de-escalates when the other is triggered, but here we tend to see a pattern of shared escalation. Whether it's initiating multiple simultaneous lawsuits or releasing statements that escalate family drama or problems within a charity, critics see a pattern where they pour gasoline on each other's grievances rather than acting as a calming force, which is something that I have always said about The initial versions of events after Megxit was that Meghan didn't seem to ever try to reassure Harry of his family's intentions or the monarchy, and seemed to sort of encourage him to drive a wedge between him and his brother, rather than sort of taking the healthier option of staying out of his familial relationships and supporting him working through it how he sees fit, and discouraging him from completely burning the bridges altogether. I mean, for goodness sakes, it's not like Meghan and Harry were together and within proximity to the royal family for very long before things went south. It was very, very brief. And it felt that Meghan didn't really give a full adjustment period to herself or to their relationship or to the job. I often think about this when people have a baby, that it's such a time of, immense change and so demanding on your time and your relationship that it doesn't really make sense to make major life decisions within the first 3 to 4 years of a child's life, because it's so disproportionately demanding during that time. And once that window closes and they become more independent and then they're approaching school age and things of that nature, it changes so much and things really, really calm down. And I feel like sometimes I see people jump the gun and leap to separating during times of great change in their lives, that if they had given themselves a little bit of patience for that change to calm down and establish a new baseline, then decide if you want to stay together or not. I always wonder about that, because Harry and Meghan underwent massive changes. Meghan in particular, massive changes during the time. And they decided to make this major, major decision of Megxit and leaving the royal family when Archie was a baby. And within 2 years of their wedding is when Megxit happened. So that seems like an lack of long-term thinking and foresight to understand the impacts of those life changes on how you may be perceiving a situation. But the core of this theory, that they are mutually enabling each other's bad behavior and mutually toxic, and perhaps both quite narcissistic and grandiose and entitled and all of that. The core of this theory is that they are not driver and passenger. They both have their hands on the wheel. And by rewarding each other's most volatile traits, they have effectively guaranteed that the drama surrounding them will never truly stop, because the conflict itself is the glue holding their dynamic together. But I'm interested to know your thoughts. Which of these 3 popular public opinions do you think is most accurate? Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this 2-part series, and I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye!